Chapter 9. Just as the ancient Near Eastern conception of prophecy and prophethood, often presented as an instrumental socio-political construct with distinctive literary genres and soteriological implications, may mean different things in different contexts. So Orpheus may be all things to all men, according to the deliberately disorienting assertion made by M.L. West, for whom there is only Orphic literature, not Orphism or the Orphics. Standing as a great academic shaman of an astonishing modern Western inanity as regards the Orphic Bacchaea, West can speak only about, quote, the fashion for claiming Orpheus as an authority, end quote, since, quote, the history of Orphism is the history of that fashion, end quote. Although a figure of myth and the preferred name for metaphysical auctoritas in telestic and esoteric matters, Orpheus nonetheless appears as a prophet and mystagogue, presumably the first to reveal the meaning of the mysteries and the rituals of initiation, teletai. Since Orphism is an ascetic and telestic way of life, W.K.C. Guthrie surmises that Orpheus did not have a new and entirely distinct species of religion to offer, but rather an esoteric modification and reinterpretation of traditional mythologies, a reformation of Dionysiac energy in the direction of Apollonian sanity. Quote, those who found it congenial might take him for their prophet, live the Orphic life, and call themselves Orphics, end quote. Famous for his charms and incantations, pharmaca, epodai, Orpheus appears in countless legendary stories as the son of the solar Apollo and the muse Calliope, or as a devoted worshipper of Apollo. Accordingly, Orpheus makes Helios the same as Apollo and Dionysus, though as a giver of oracles and a prophet he was always companion of Apollo, Apollonos Hetyron. Subsequently, Dionysus sent the Maenads against him, and he was torn to pieces like the Egyptian Osiris. In this respect, however, it needs to be remembered that the much-laboured contrast between Dionysian and Apollonian dimensions in ancient Mediterranean culture belongs to German speculation, as A.H. Armstrong rightly observes, rather than to the actual realm of Hellenic piety. The philosophical ecstasy may be sober and passionless, and the utmost madness like a supranoetic metaphysical silence. In a certain sense, the prophetic and poetic frenzy somewhat resembles the epistemic and hermeneutic illumination mediated by the holy light of myths and symbols. These myths, Orphic, Hesiodic, and Homeric, may cause a state of Bacchic ecstasy because of their theurgical quality. Therefore, Proclus prays to the muse that they should bring him to ecstasy through the Noeric myths of the sages. From hymns No eros me sophon, bec chousati muthos. I apologise for my appalling Greek. And he turns to Athena, the sober patroness of Platonic philosophy, saying, from hymns, give my soul holy light from your sacred myths and wisdom and lore. As the paradigmatic lyre player and liturgical singer, Orpheus was also a theologos and theurgos of sorts. According to some versions of his death, Orpheus was a victim of a thunderbolt from Zeus, since, in a similar way as Prometheus, he taught men things unknown to them before, expounding the mysteries of the soul's descent and ascent. The lyre and the decapitated head of the murdered Orpheus were thrown into a river and floated across to the island of Lesbos. The temple of Bacchus, the Orphic Dionysus, was built at the spot where the singing and prophesying head of Orpheus was buried. The miraculous lyre had been dedicated as the temple of Apollo, and the singing head became famous as a giver of oracles and prophecies. And so, is Orpheus a prophet in the trivial sense of a person or a symbol who foretells the future, or in the sense of the theological administrator and authority in covenants and treatises of the Israelite politico-military enterprises? In both cases, prophecy is an integral part of the divination whose fundamental cosmological premises and logic are based on the ancient ideology of Near Eastern royalty. Consequently, prophecy is a form of divination along with dreams and visions. As Nisanen indicates, in the ancient Near East, the primary function of all divination was the conviction of the identity, capacity, and legitimacy of the ruler, and the justification and limitation of his power based on the communication between the ruler and the gods. Nisanen argues that any definition of prophecy, not just in the widespread cases of literary manifestos and fictions, is a scholarly construct, and a written prophecy is always a scribed construct. The very notion of the human being able to function as a substitute for the animated and speaking divine statue, or as an autonomous mouthpiece of the deity, is the outcome of particular socio-historical forms and versions of the covenantal patronship. Nisanen writes, this quote from What is Prophecy? An Ancient Near Eastern Perspective, 2004, page 21, and this quote will carry us out. According to Liddell and Scott's Greek-English lexicon, propheteia is equivalent to the gift of interpreting the will of gods, and prophetoiou to being an interpreter of the gods, whereas prophetes is one who speaks for a god and interprets his will to man, or generally an interpreter. If the word prophecy then can be agreed to denote primarily the activity of transmitting and interpreting the divine will, it can be used as a general concept of related activities in the ancient and modern worlds, independently of its biblical roots and religious affiliations.